My name is Emily, and at 27 years old. My sister mocked my waitress job. Get a real job, she said. I revealed I am her husband's boss. I just revoked his raise, I said. She cried at my feet. If you have ever felt betrayed by the people who should have been your biggest supporters, let me know where you are watching from. My sister's fork came to a sudden halt in midair as soon as she and her husband entered the private dining area of the restaurant, and she immediately changed into performance gear. In every sense, Emma was the epitome of someone who was always on the lookout for an audience, always prepared with the perfect word that would give the impression that she was superior to everyone else. On the other hand, this evening she did not even bother to wait till dessert time. She made sure that her voice was loud enough for everyone sitting at the table to hear when she said, "Please do not ask me about her job. She earns a living by carrying plates. Let's keep our expectations reasonable." She reclined in her chair, gave a smirk, gave her lips a little pull, and a surge of giggles erupted around me, sharp, loud, and painfully reminiscent of something I've felt before. In spite of the fact that it seemed as though my gut was constricting, I prevented my shoulders from moving, even though I had expected a circumstance similar to this one to occur, and I went to the scene this evening, armed with that knowledge. The fact that I heard it spoken aloud still managed to hit a nerve with me. The only thing that my father did was clear his throat. He did not say anything offensive to me. My mother stirred the iced tea that she was drinking as though she had not understood anything at all. Following my aunt's whispered remark to my uncle, both of them burst into laughter once more. I kept a weak smile on my face. "Cute," was the only word that I could manage to utter. "That is a very creative idea," Emma responded with an exaggerated shrug of her shoulders. "I'm just telling it like it is. While I don't have anything against serving tables, let's not kid ourselves into thinking that it's the same as working in corporate America." Ryan, who is her husband, took a seat in the chair that was directly across from me and loosened the collar of his button-down shirt. He gave me a modest nod, and his eyes conveyed that he was sympathetic to my situation. Despite the fact that he and I were not particularly close, he did not demonstrate the same level of cruelty that she did. In spite of this, he looked around the table with his eyes moving back and forth in a way that seemed uncomfortable, which is a common reaction for people who are aware of knowledge that other people are not. I was weighing my alternatives when my heart started pounding in my chest. It was quite clear that Emma had no idea who the individual was, whose identity she was mocking on this particular night. I am completely in the dark about what it is that I have been preserving from this family. I am completely in the dark when it comes to figuring out what my original plan was. The actual state of affairs was uncomplicated. Until that point, my employment as a waiter on a part-time basis had remained unchanged. This job is something that I take pleasure in doing. I was able to establish a good relationship with the folks who came to my establishment. I was pleased with both the movement and the sound that was produced. Nevertheless, that is only one component of the complete tale. In addition, I had not reprimanded anybody for making the presumption that it was the case. Because of that work, I was able to make ends meet financially when I graduated from college. The one item that was never brought up in any conversation by them or by me ended up being the thing that ended up affecting everything. The individual who holds the position of Director of Employee Relations at Silver Oak Tech has the authority to provide approval to salaries, including Ryan's. This person also has a salary that is in the six figures and a view of the city from their office. Emma did not have knowledge of the circumstances, however, he did. That was in no way, shape, or form done by my family. Emma was pushing every single button that I had at my disposal, despite the fact that I had not previously intended to make it common knowledge. As if I were not present, my father turned to Ryan and said, "So, Ryan," in order to address him directly in response to the query. Ryan answered, "How's that company treating you? Silver something, Silver Tech." I experienced a minor muscular spasm in my lips. I felt as though I was going through something extraordinary every time that I heard the name of the place where I was employed at this table. Father responded with a nod of assent. Right, big place. Good money. I believe that you were promoted not too long ago. Is that correct?" "Yes," Ryan said in a slow, deliberate manner. "I was the one who did it," Emma proclaimed, fixing her gaze of pride on him as she clutched his arm in a firm grip in order to refrain from uttering the caustic words that were coming to the forefront of my consciousness in reaction to her declaration that he's the one putting in the work around here. Meanwhile, Emily's bringing home leftover burgers. I inhaled a slow, deep breath through my nostrils. Beneath the table, I clasped my napkin firmly between my fingers. Ryan cast me a gaze that was dripping with tension. It appeared to convey both the message, "I apologize," and the message, "I hope you don't disclose my location." He was aware of the fact that Emma's mouth was now causing difficulties. Most importantly, he was completely cognizant of the fact that the individual who had approved his new salary just 5 days prior was the same person, but he did not utter a single word. I gave the impression that I was fascinated by inclining my head. I also pretended as if I had not been hurt by her comments. As the inquiry, "If you don't mind my asking, what kind of raise did you get?" was put to Ryan, the table became just a little quieter. He made an effort to change his position while he was sitting. He stuttered and said, a pretty big one." "That is incredible," Emma interjected before he could finish his thought. I restrained myself from laughing out loud as I responded. "If they did not give him a promotion, they would be completely foolish. He possesses an inherent ability to lead." If she were only aware of the number of nights that he spent working up a sweat over policies and procedures, asking me directly for clarification because he didn't want to sound inexperienced in front of his supervisor. While nodding, Mom replied, "I am extremely proud of him." I held up my cup of water. He started to clench his jaw as though he was already aware of the route in which I was about to go, even though I was not close to him at all. "Ryan, congratulations. It is always a wonderful surprise to receive a raise." The lunch continued, but the atmosphere in my immediate surroundings shifted. I was capable of perceiving it. Emma continued to dig as she felt the tingling sensation beneath her ribs, waiting for a moment that was approaching swiftly. The anticipation of this moment was a joyful feeling. "Tell us, please, how many tables you waited on today, or yesterday, or whenever you were on duty," she said, directing her comments toward Emily. She thought her own joke humorous, as seen by her laughter. I forced myself a grin, but it was a very restricted one. He made the comment, "I have a lot on my plate these days." She took a sip of her wine before saying, "I'm sure." With a sigh, Dad answered, "Busy lugging bread baskets. We have always been hopeful that you will wish to achieve more in life, lovely Emily." When I became aware of the fact that I required something that was both reliable and authentic, my heart rate started to decrease. There is an odd sensation that occurs when someone flips switches within me. "Honey, you know what?" She made a dismissive gesture toward him as she said this. "We should probably avoid doing that," it was suggested. "Let's take a break. She is not the target of my insults. I'm only pointing out that she is. It is in your best interest if you allow her to speak," he continued in a gentle tone. "Emma!" All of the people who were sitting at the table were completely motionless. In an instant, Emma's eyebrows sprang up. Ryan gave me a look that was accompanied by a forced exhale. And this was the first time that night that I became aware of it. "What? For what reason?" He stated, "Emily doesn't exactly have the job you think she has." At that same moment, he became aware that he was no longer able to disguise the truth. My mother blinked her eyes. While I was sitting in my chair, I raised the question, "What is the significance of that?" and waited for their perplexity to fully settle in. I kept my voice steady as I asked, "Like what?" Emma responded with a bitter laugh before saying, "It indicates that there are things that I have not disclosed. Are you suggesting that you switch up the restaurants that you go to?" "I am happy with the fact that I work for Silver Oak," I answered. The sound of Dad's glass being tapped against the table could be heard. Emma looked from my feet to my head, and then she scoffed and said, "What did you just say? In what universe?" I gave the remark time to sink in by allowing it to linger in the air for a while before Ryan had the opportunity to rescue her. I inquired, "Corporate?" Her eyes continued to stare into mine as I continued to speak. Following that, she stopped smiling. Once I had said, "I am the person who has the authority to approve salary increases," the room fell into silence. The quiet was so complete that you could have heard a napkin being dropped. Ryan gave his silent confirmation of everything by swallowing hard. Father was so surprised that he stepped closer to me. Emma's face became pale and my mother's hand froze in midair. I didn't raise the pitch of my voice. I didn't gloat over my accomplishments. All I did was say, "One more time, I want to offer my best wishes to you on your promotion, Ryan." The last devastating blow. My lips could hardly form a smile as I looked on while my sister's life was turned upside down. Emma kept her silence for the entire 8 seconds that passed. This is the best that any person has ever accomplished. Her eyes were wide open as she stared at me. It was as if she had to take a moment in order to allow her brain to reset. After a short pause, she was able to speak, her voice sounding weak. "Are you in agreement with increases in pay?" My eyebrows were lifted in response. My aunt let out a cough, and then she covered her mouth with her napkin. This occurred in the middle of a list of other chores that she was completing. My uncle mumbled to himself, "Well, that's something," as if I'd been hiding a secret identity this whole time. Emma's voice increased by a full octave as she said, "Yeah." Ryan massaged the back of his neck for a while. "So I guess Emily is actually one of the senior approval officers in the Human Resources Department. What caused you to withhold this information from me?" he inquired, avoiding her look. "For a number of years, she has been employed at that location. Because whenever I made an attempt, you cracked a joke at the expense of her occupation. I determined that the argument was not worth the trouble." She slackened her jaw in shock once again. However, for the first time, she was at a loss for words and unable to come up with a response. Dad's eyebrows were raised, and he came closer. "Emily, is this true? This whole time you have been employed in the corporate sector, is that correct?" I responded with a smile. 2 years. The perplexed expression that Mom had directed at her softened, but as she turned to look at Emma, a flash of annoyance appeared in her eyes. In a composed manner, she stated, "Well, maybe it would be best if we didn't make assumptions about people." Emma responded, her cheeks taking on a warm color. "All right, but why are you working as a waitress then? Why not simply state that you had a legitimate position?" I exhaled slowly because I wanted to keep the many areas of my life separate from one another. Additionally, I did not feel as though I needed to obtain the approval of individuals who had never asked me for it in the first place. Emma's body became rigid as a result of that landing. This time, Dad cleared his throat, and it sounded like he was feeling apologetic. "We didn't mean to, sweetheart," he said. "You were being serious," I said in a quiet voice. There was an invisible tension in the air that appeared to be getting more concentrated. "But it's okay," he stated. "It pushed me to work harder. The plates have been served. I am going to have the pasta, and Emma will have the salmon." Despite this, no one moved to take their forks. The full extent of Emma's ego has not yet been realized. "All right, so what?" she responded after giving a brief snap. "So now you hold a high-ranking position as an executive, huh?" "No," was all that I said. Ryan suppressed a smile as he muttered under his breath, "Just someone who does their job well and someone who doesn't mind being underestimated." "I would call that a massive understatement," Emma responded, her look so fierce that it could easily pierce through metal. After that, she once again focused her attention on me. At this point, her countenance was softer, and there was an air of uncertainty about her that I had never noticed before. With a subdued voice, she asked, "Can it be that I was the reason for your embarrassment?" "I do indeed agree with this statement," I declared with candor. After a moment of silence fell over the table, something unexpected transpired. The individual continued by saying, "Nevertheless, I am not here in order to seek retribution. I simply want to be treated with a fundamental level of respect," I said. My mother leaned over and offered my hand a soft squeeze. "We're proud of you," she murmured in a whisper. "Really? Is that so?" I felt my chest constrict. I could feel a warm, uncomfortable sensation coming up in my throat. This time, Dad gave a nod with a bit more conviction. "You've established a life for yourself, Emily. We just did not have that information." I made the comment, "You do as of now," to which Ryan responded by raising his glass in my direction and saying, "For what it's worth, that raise you gave me made an entire year's worth of difference. It was not required for you to do it." I shrugged my shoulders and said, "You brought this upon yourself. You put in a lot of effort. I was aware that your boss would not contest it." Emma closed her eyes for a brief moment as if she was in need of some time alone. After a short pause, she muttered, "I apologize." The other individuals seated at the table were so flabbergasted that it was comparable to a meteorite impact. There was even a gasp from my aunt. I took a close look at the features of her face. For a change, she was not on stage. She did not have a smirk on her face. "I didn't know that you had these feelings for me," she said, looking down at the napkin she was fidgeting with. She seemed as though she was embarrassed. "You didn't ask," I said in a soft and polite manner. She nodded, after swallowing with difficulty. I was shocked to discover that I had faith in her when she told me, "I will perform better than I did before." The mood at the table began to become more comfortable, shoulders that are free of tangles. A small smile appeared on Dad's lips. Conversations were picked up again as my aunt grabbed hold of her bottle of water. This time around, they were more quiet and gentler, with less obvious angles. Emma attempted another go. "Perhaps after dinner, you can tell me about your job," she added. "The genuine article." I responded with a smile and said, "I'd like that." It was not a matter of revenge. It will not occur in the dramatic, exploding way that people have in their imaginations. It was more satisfying. It was not my responsibility to humiliate her in retaliation. The only thing that I desired was for her to view me in the way that I truly am, and she was eventually able to accomplish that. Once the dessert menus were placed on the table, the atmosphere had relaxed enough that people were finally able to have conversations without whispering. It was an odd sensation, as though the whole evening had suddenly changed tracks and placed itself on a different one where I was not ignored, or the punchline of the family's ongoing jokes. While addressing Emily, Ryan leaned his torso over the table and rested his elbows on it. He had a tiny smile on his face. He added, "I have to say that you really did succeed in keeping this entire thing a secret, didn't you?" My response was, "I did. It was not my aim to spite anyone by concealing it. All I desired was a life in which I didn't have to continuously justify my own value." Mom nodded in agreement as if she were feeling uncomfortable. She said, "We should have asked." In a soft voice, I replied by stating that it would have been delightful if we had been more observant. Nevertheless, I do not have any negative emotions towards you. Emma kept fidgeting in her chair, her fingers running along the rim of the glass of water she was holding. In some way, she appeared to be of a smaller stature. She was still herself, and she was still as dramatic as ever, albeit she was not as sharply defined as she had been before. "Would you be so kind as to describe what you did today?" was her question. "Could you please provide a more detailed description of your position? What are the specific duties that you are responsible for carrying out?" I gave a straightforward explanation. "I am responsible for handling personnel issues, mediating confrontations, negotiating raises, and approving changes to remuneration. Some days are more straightforward than others. There are days that give me the sensation that I am juggling fire." Ryan gave a nod. "She's not kidding. You can't fool the people who work in human resources at Silver Oak." Emma scrutinized me from head to toe, her face conveying her concern. "I've always believed that human resources is simply a matter of paperwork," she said. "It's people," I gently corrected her. "People who are dealing with genuine problems, genuine fears, and genuine goals. And there are instances when I am the sole obstacle between an employee and an unjust circumstance." Her gaze turned more sympathetic. "That actually sounds important." My response was, "It is." She swallowed with difficulty before saying, "I shouldn't have made fun of you. I truly was unaware of it." I said while smiling, my tone affectionate but also commanding, "Now you do." The waiter returned to us with dessert. "We have some warm brownies and chorizo cheese dish for you to enjoy." That night, for the first time, Emma slid her plate my way. "Trade?" she asked, her voice low and kind. I let out a snicker and said, "Cheesecake is something that I continue to dislike. However, if it's looking right at me, I'll eat it." She gave us a little half smile as we switched our plates, a gesture of kindness given in her home language. "In honor of Emily, for the incredible surprise that you provided tonight, as well as for all of the diligent work that you have completed without requiring any form of praise from anyone else," he declared as he raised his mug of coffee in my direction. My mother was the last one to take a sip. My uncle also participated in the toast by raising his glass and saying to Emily. Once all the other people had finished, Emma took her turn and said to my sister, who succeeded in becoming more popular than the rest of us. Even though we were all too busy talking, everybody started to laugh at that point. Genuine laughter was produced this time, the kind that did not have a biting edge. There was a sensation of warmth that I felt emanating from the back of my eyes. I blinked rapidly in order to avoid being noticed. I made my way out to the hallway to get some fresh air after dinner was over. I have always found that moments such as this one, which are so incredibly emotional and so unexpectedly therapeutic, required me to take a moment to collect myself. With my eyes closed and my back resting against the wall, I took a long breath in. She stopped next to me, her arms folded across her chest. There were no indications that she was the same sister who had mocked me before 2 hours prior. She had been approaching silently, with her feet making no noise. "I sincerely apologize to you, Emily," she said in a whisper. "For all of these years, I believed that you had just stopped trying. I had the impression that you were getting married." "That is not the case," I said in a quiet voice. I was in the process of constructing something in a hushed tone. "Please, at this very moment, I am cognizant of that particular circumstance," she added, while awkwardly shifting her body. I started to feel a little bit better when I heard the statement. "And I'm proud of you, even if I don't always show it." I whispered a subdued thank you. Following a little moment of silence, she said, "I want us to be better than the sisters who are always criticizing each other. I would not like for that to be a reflection of us," he said. I made a gesture with my head, and she responded with a faint smile and said, "Me too." As a result, I suggested that we might be able to meet up for a cup of coffee at some point during the week. Only we two don't make any jokes and don't take any shots at people." I was unable to keep myself from returning the smile and said, "I would like that." When we entered the dining room together as a couple, the entire table seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. It was as if they had been holding their breath up until that point. This was the first time in a long time that I felt like I belonged to a family. On this occasion, leaving the restaurant was a unique experience. In some way, it was lighter, as if the air was not pressing against my chest in the manner that it typically does during family gatherings. This evening, the circumstances went through a change, which was not attributable to my desire for retribution, but instead to the fact that the truth was finally able to express itself without restriction. As we made our way outside, Ryan held the door open for us. "Hey, Emily," he whispered. "I am quite pleased to hear that you have finally spoken up. That was not a requirement on your part." "Even though I am aware of that fact," I responded, "I believe that it was time." Emma maintained her position at his side for a period of time, and the expression on her face was more benevolent than any I had before seen. It appeared like she was experiencing a feeling of self-satisfaction. I was entirely caught off guard by that. While her arm was wrapped around his, Mom whispered to Dad, "We ought to ask her to come over for a visit more frequently." "Yes, we have been too distant," said Father, giving a nod of agreement. There was only one reason that made that night feel like it was worth it. We proceeded to the parking lot together with not a single person taking off ahead of or falling behind the group. At that moment, I felt like I was a part of the group instead of just existing on the outskirts of it. When I arrived at my car, Emma regained her ability to speak. "Emily, wait." I took a turn. While Ryan was speaking with me, she walked over with an expression of uncertainty on her face. "He is intending to provide you with assistance in regard to something, and you know, I feel the same way as well." I raised an eyebrow and said, "Help me." She gave a small nod and then let out a breath of air. "You have never relied on anyone to assist you with anything. You do not make any requests for assistance. You simply go through life even when it is difficult. I have the impression that we failed to remember that you are not actually made of stone." "I'm not exactly that, so we figured," I said with a small laugh. "Maybe it's our turn to show up for you." I could sense a soothing warmth emanating from my chest. "That means more than you might imagine," Ryan stated. "At any time that you require assistance with anything, whether it be at work, advice, support, or anything else, you should not hesitate to ask. And if somebody causes you to have any problems, I will support you." "He intends that in a manner that is not awkward or strange," Emma said as she gave him a gentle nudge with her elbow. "I have figured it out," I said with a smile on my face. "I mean business this time around," she said, looking in my direction once again. "From this point on, I will not make any jokes at your expense concerning your work. I am not going to speak of you in a derogatory manner. I would like to improve." In my reply, I stated, "I am of the opinion that we ought to improve from this point onward." "Well, in that case, excellent," she said, her eyes exhibiting a glimmering characteristic. "We are embarking on a new beginning right now." Initially, our embrace was awkward, but over time, it transformed into something more authentic. It was a lengthy, tight embrace that was saturated with apologies, which neither of us was able to express in their totality. And then, all of a sudden, the years of bitterness did not disappear, but they did weaken their grip. Once I made my way back home later that night, I removed my shoes, got cozy on the couch, and then powered up my laptop. I got an email with a new notification, which caused a noise to be emitted. "Emily, Gratula owner." This is the subject line of the email. The sender is the Board of Executives at Silver Oak. My heart was pounding quicker than usual. I pushed the button. I had the sensation of being overwhelmed by a rapid rush of feelings, which made me feel as though I had no other option but to hide my mouth. "We are happy to let you know that you have been chosen for the post of assistant director." I had been working toward this moment for a long time, and it came at last. Now that I had achieved my goal, I was no longer alone. There were other people around me, alone, by myself, and with a great deal of patience, I was finally able to attend the meeting where I would be promoted. The timing was so perfectly aligned that it felt as if I were living out a scene from a film. After having spoken up for myself and demanded respect from the people who were of the utmost significance, I found myself at last being recognized for all the hard work that I had put in at the place where I was employed. Tears obscured the picture as I blinked rapidly. After that, my phone made a buzzing sound, indicating that I had received a message from Emma. "How about we get coffee tomorrow?" This one is on me. I was being sincere when I stated that. I am proud of you, sister. I dried the tears in my eyes while I let out a small chuckle. For the first time in a very long time, I did not have the impression that my life was split between the person I was when I was at home and the person I was when I was at work. This was the first time that everything fell into place. I felt respect. I had family. I had peace. I experienced growth. I got a new job. I had a fresh start. And most importantly, I had a sister who finally recognized me for the person I really am. Emily, wait. I took a turn. While Ryan was speaking with me, she walked over with an expression of uncertainty on her face. He is intending to provide you with assistance in regard to something. And I feel the same way as well. I raised an eyebrow and said, "Help me." She gave a small nod and then let out a breath of air. You have never relied on anyone to assist you with anything. You do not make any requests for assistance. You simply go through life even when it is difficult. I have the impression that we fail to remember that you are not actually made of stone. I'm not exactly that, so we figured, I said with a small laugh. Maybe it's our turn to show up for you. I could sense a soothing warmth emanating from my chest. That means more than you might imagine, Ryan stated. At any time that you require assistance with anything, whether it be at work, advice, support, or anything else, you should not hesitate to ask. And if somebody causes you to have any problems, I will support you. He intends that in a manner that is not awkward or strange, Emma said, as she gave him a gentle nudge with her elbow. I have figured it out, I said with a smile on my face. I mean business this time around, she said, looking in my direction once again. From this point on, I will not make any jokes at your expense concerning your work. I am not going to speak of you in a derogatory manner. I would like to improve. In my reply, I stated, I am of the opinion that we ought to improve from this point onward. Well, in that case, excellent, she said, her eyes exhibiting a glimmering characteristic. We are embarking on a new beginning right now. Initially, our embrace was awkward, but over time, it transformed into something more authentic. It was a lengthy, tight embrace that was saturated with apologies, which neither of us was able to express in their totality. And then all of a sudden, the years of bitterness did not disappear, but they did weaken their grip. Once I made my way back home later that night, I removed my shoes, got cozy on the couch, and then powered up my laptop. I got an email with a new notification which caused a noise to be emitted. Emily, gratulaire. This is the subject line of the email. The sender is the Board of Executives at Silver Oak. My heart was pounding quicker than usual. I pushed the button. I had the sensation of being overwhelmed by a rapid rush of feelings which made me feel as though I had no other option but to hide my mouth. We are happy to let you know that you have been chosen for the post of Assistant Director. I had been working toward this moment for a long time, and it came at last. Now that I had achieved my goal, I was no longer alone. There were other people around me alone, by myself, and with a great deal of patience. I was finally able to attend the meeting where I would be promoted. The timing was so perfectly aligned that it felt as if I were living out a scene from a film. After having spoken up for myself and demanded respect from the people who were of the utmost significance, I found myself at last being recognized for all the hard work that I had put in at the place where I was employed. Tears obscured the picture as I blinked rapidly. After that, my phone made a buzzing sound, indicating that I had received a message from Emma. How about we get coffee tomorrow? This one is on me. I was being sincere when I stated that. I am proud of you, sister. I dried the tears in my eyes while I let out a small chuckle. For the first time in a very long time, I did not have the impression that my life was split between the person I was when I was at home and the person I was when I was at work. This was the first time that everything fell into place. I felt respect. I had family. I had peace. I experienced growth. I got a new job. I had a fresh start. And most importantly, I had a sister who finally recognized me for the person I really